But
onto a different battle,
dude. Yes, an actual battle. Which again, the Millie's Joyner thing, it wasn't intentional. Just two big artists that dropped on the same day. Wanted to give them their due diligence. Talk about.
Yeah, we didn't mean that. We didn't mean that. We did. This wasn't a. That was a musical battle we made up by ourselves and simulated. This is a real battle that people actually said disrespectful things. And
so disrespectful.
To each
oh
other.
my god!
Yeah, this is Mike's
Ruthless.
first time also listening to
Ruthless.
like, this battle rap stuff. At least I don't know if it's your first time.
Yes.
It seems like you haven't. Okay, yeah.
It is.
No, bro, they're talking dirty. So if you don't know, man, if you don't know, in hip hop, there's the other realm of hip hop that is battle rap.
I did not know this. Just before you get into it, I want to say it was real quick. You brought me into a world that I had no idea existed. None. No clue. No clue. I was listening to this, and this is actually a pretty funny story. Like, you were like, oh, when we were figuring out what we want to talk about this album, you're like, oh, I mean, on this episode, excuse me, you were like, oh, this battle rap's happening this weekend. And I kind of just, like, I was like, oh, okay, that's cool, whatever. And then I realized, like, how big this actually was. And I fell asleep before the actual main event, which was just brutal. But then the replay came out literally yesterday, so I was like, oh, perfect. I watched it. I finished it. I finished the last round today. I watched the 2 rounds last night and then finished the last round today. I was stunned at how ruthless these two dudes were. Murda Mook and Tay Roc. Holy shit! But this is your world. This is more your thing, not more your world, not mine. But
I'm excited to hear you out. I'm just laying it out for him because I know battle rap honestly isn't something that a lot of people are tapped into. It's like something that hip hop heads are tapped into, and it's not super new. You know what I mean? This is essentially what the culture of hip hop is at its beginning. Is like you would walk up to people from different neighborhoods or in your neighborhood or at the lunchroom, for God's sakes. I remember, having rap battles at my lunch table with other people. So it's good to see that this is still going, and it really got its jump in like early 2000s. With DVDs, smack DVDs that would get circulated around with like big battle raps, big rap battles happening in New York and across the country, but definitely New York was probably the epicenter of all of it. But so the culture is still alive, and it was popular there in the DVD era, and then it kind of had a dip, and then they rebranded, turned it all into URL. They've gone to the internet, and now it's kind of I think it's getting bigger than it probably ever has been before, and it's on the rise. It's back again on the rise. Not as big as we'd like it to be, but it's looking like it's going up, and it's definitely has a lot wider audience now. And I just recently got into battle rap, probably within the last year. Had always known about battle rap and had always seen clips here and there, and always had like uncles and friends and dads of my friends would always watch battle rap and stuff. But I really got into it into the last year, especially as I've been taking my music more seriously, and then I really just like coming to it like open-minded, because I've kind of thought maybe battle raps are just a little boring, just because there's a stench on battle rappers, you know what I mean? Especially when they make music, 'cause they don't. It's not always super successful. But Murda Mook versus Tay Roc is the epitome of this kind of it was also like this for their last event. They had Loaded Lux versus Sue Surf. These are two rappers, Loaded Lux being the veteran and Sue Surf being a veteran in his own right, but like just younger, like 10 years younger, and in the internet era. This right here, Murda Mook versus Tay Roc, is like that, but heightened to a different level, because Murda Mook is probably like undisputably like the biggest figure, or at least most popular rapper of his generation. And Tay Roc, I think, is undisputably not the best. I think he's I definitely think he's up there, but that's subjective. But he's definitely, undoubtedly, one of the most popular of this internet era, and has been like at the top of his game for the last couple events. So this was a huge clash, in like culturally, generationally, and stylistically. You know what I mean?
I wanted to comment on that quickly too. It's just like I liked their styles kind of back and forth. I think they rapped very differently. Especially, I thought Mook. I thought Mook was a little more creative with his bars than Tay Roc was. But overall, I'm curious though. Did they have like an official score? Like, I don't understand quite how it works. Like, did they have an official score of this, or is it? And then my other question My other question was,
oh, this is awesome. Oh, I'm gonna take this podcast, completely steal it from you, turn it into a battle rap podcast, because I've been watching battle rap podcasts all weekend after this, and the score is something that's up for debate. Like, it's a very hot debate right now about the scoring system.
Well, what would you score? What would you have scored it? Like, in terms of rounds, with 3 rounds, like who won it? Like, and how many rounds did they win?
I had, and I think I still am just trying to be honest with how I feel about it. I have Tay Roc 2-1.
Really?
Thank you. I got Tay Roc 2-1, and I actually just rewatched it. And I'll say this, even while watching it, Mook's bars were a lot better on the second watch. Because after it had all ended and I started looking at, the post interviews or post event things with other rappers are doing or that people are talking about in comment threads and stuff, I was surprised that there was such a large reaction about people being like, Mook murdered Roc. Mook killed him. Like, people were saying, in battle rap they say 30. You got 30, 3-0. Like, people were saying it's a Mook 30. And then there's tons of people on the other half, and what got reflected in the official results on the Caffeine app that hosts these events, people vote live round by round. That's how it's officially kind of collected. The data itself is collected, and through that, Tay Roc won 3-0. Which
really,
yeah. So that's
surprising to me.
Very contentious decision. A very contentious topic, just because there's a lot of nuance to this as to why Tay Roc would win. Obviously, him being younger, more tapped into people who are on the internet, making comments, voting, and advocating on the internet. Tay Roc has that audience built in. He streams something that I don't want to straight rip this off. This is something a battle rap podcaster I heard. Let's Talk Battle Rap. If anybody is interested in getting into battle rap, Let's Talk Battle Rap is a great podcast. One of the hosts goes on to talk about Tay Roc streams 5 hours a day of him, smoking and chatting with fans, and he's developed a culture and audience already on the app, on the platform. So of course those people are committed to coming back and showing out for Mook, or making sure they get their voting entries in order to support their guy. Where obviously Mook is on the complete other end of the spectrum, where he represents the generation above Tay Roc that didn't grow up with phones, doesn't watch live streams, battle raps used to be pay-per-view, you know what I mean? So you'd have one buddy, you'd probably bust it down with 6 of your buddies or something, you know what I mean? And you're not worried about getting your responses in. Someone puts it on TV and you argue about it in your house, and that's how you decide the score, which is another cool way to go about it. But obviously for engagement, for definitive answer, they made a voting system. And in that voting system, I'm pretty sure it's had Tay Roc 3-0. Maybe it was Tay Roc 2-1. Either way, I know it for sure had Tay Roc winning, and I want to say by a large margin.
That is so interesting, because actually this is interesting because I'm coming from a very unbiased section of this, because I don't know. The one thing I will say, I got very lost sometimes with the bars, because I didn't know, I don't know who they're talking about. I don't know their history at all.
Who they're referencing, right?
So a lot of the references,
it's difficult.
Yeah, I missed some of the references, and I don't know enough. I'm a little ignorant to the actual culture and them as artists or people. So some of the things they were talking about, I wasn't as tapped into. But coming from an unbiased music reviewer, perspective that I am, I actually thought Mook beat him 2-1. That's what I had, and I was looking at the rounds as I was listening. I had Mook, I had Roc winning round 1, and I had Mook.
Really?
I did. I had Roc.
Really?
I had Roc round 1. And I had Mook the last 2. Personally, maybe I gotta go back and look. Yeah, really? I did.
Yeah, I'll say, dude. I love battle rap. I love hip hop. You can tell. And I watch some of these things, over and over again. I at least watch it twice if I can, if it's on the app, because there are bars that go over your head, right? And there are references that you can even learn what they mean afterwards, and then you come back and listen to that thing and you're like, oh wait, if I knew that coming into it. And that's another thing that people argue about with the voting, is that you're voting it round by round, when sometimes a third round might, kind of fix some of the loose ends that the first round left, you know what I mean? Or the second round might tie in and be a great be the perfect setup for the third round, and that could ultimately mean that maybe that second round was better, you know what I mean? It's so it's difficult. It's I don't know how you're gonna vote it to make it fair, but I had Rock. The first round for me is what was up for grabs. That to me is where I thought it could be both ways. I thought Mook had a strong first round, definitely. I also thought Tay Roc had a strong first round. Although it did seem like he was pacing himself, none of that first round for me did Murda Mook say something that like had me go like, oh my goodness, like, and that's part of Tay Roc's style. Tay Roc had a couple has these punchlines that are ferocious punches, you feel me, like where it's just like you get it when he says it, and it's clever, like it's easy to it's digestible in the moment, and there's the wit behind it where you're like, that was creative. So there are these tangible almost one-liners you can take away instantly,
right?
Which, especially on the first listen, it wasn't resonating with me from Mook. The second round, so when I'm watching it live, that's where I'm still leaning kind of Tay Roc, but I do have this Tay Roc bias because I love Rock. He's one of my favorite battle rappers now. The second round, I thought Tay Roc absolutely turned up. I thought Tay Roc's bars, his conviction, his style, he was performing high level Tay Roc, kind of what I think he was holding on to in that first round, which is why I'm like, he was pacing himself, because he's an energy kind of rapper too. That energy and that performance is a big part of it, although I still think people sometimes try and minimize or reduce how much lyricism is in his performance. But that second round, I thought he was doing top tier Tay Roc stuff, and then that third round, I thought Mook absolutely went nuts. I thought Mook went crazy. Like, it was punchlines, it was metaphors, and like the schemes that he was saying. Again, I'm grabbing some of this from other battle rap commentary I've seen, but you especially go back on the second listen. Something that I think Mook maybe could even teach Tay Roc is that like the schemes that he was pulling out. When we say schemes, talking about rhyme schemes and just metaphors that. And like lines of wordplay that all blend together or are related to each other. He can use one scheme. Let's say it was an animal scheme. He'd rap for 5 or 6 lines. Like, you know what I mean? 5 or 6, 7 lines that all had the same kind of wordplay woven throughout, but was still describing something and moving on to different points, you know what I mean? Or I'm like, that kind of focus and that kind of lyricism, that's where I was like, oh, Tay Roc definitely didn't do enough, definitely fell short of this, because some of the energy and some of the the threats and the gun bars and stuff, the gun bars are classic, the gun bars I think are necessary, but they don't always resonate in that same way. They don't always make a point in the same way that Mook was.
Yeah, with Tay Roc too, I thought he stumbled a bit on that third round for sure. I didn't think that there was as much conviction from him. I definitely had Mook winning the last 2 rounds. I thought, I think what got Mook, it seemed like what got Mook going more, and why I went with him the last 2 rounds was when Rock had mentioned something about his mom, and then I think he popped off after that. I think that was what it was that really got it. He had some interesting lines, I thought too. I will say this about Mook, he did reuse a couple lines. He said in the first round he had said something along the lines of you got candy bars, I don't give a fuck if it's Halloween, and then he used it. Then he used it again in the third one.
That's funny. That's funny you say that. That's a thing about battle rap. That's those were that was his outro bars. You know what I mean? And if you pay attention and watch a couple battle rap, Tay Roc also had the same kind of thing. Tay Roc has had a couple outro bars. Sometimes so battle rappers would do that, and you know what I mean. And the whole thing is the last 6 bars of your round are the same thing, but they're supposed to hit harder every time. You know what I mean?
So that
was intentional, I think, and that's just also like kind of one of the normal things. I'll just say, just want to make that point. One of the normal things stylistically in battle rap.
Interesting. I actually had a question too. I wanted to ask you because I was curious. Do they just freestyle this, or is some of this pre-written? Like what is typical for that?
Yeah, it's God, that would be so crazy if they freestyled.
I was about to say, because that'd be so impressive. So impressive if
aliens. These would be literal aliens. But no, so definitely everybody's coming to the table, and you're expected to come to the table with 3 written rounds, right?
Okay.
But just like hip hop, freestyling is essential to hip hop, and just like if you were rap battling someone in real life, you know what I mean? If you want to freestyle, by all means, you can freestyle whatever you want. You have whatever creative license you want. Like, you can, you know what I mean? And that comes down to your skill. So there are some battle rappers who you could say their biggest strengths are rebuttaling live, freestyling off the cuff, and it works for some rappers. You do that, and some people say that Tay Roc actually tried to do that in the 3rd round and ended up stumbling because of some of this stuff. You could tell maybe he was getting shaken up by some of the stuff Mook was actually saying, and there were definitely some rebuttals in there, and you can even assume that some of these people maybe prep rebuttals just in case certain things get thrown out there, but they don't necessarily want to address it if it's not going to be spoken about.
Right.
But there are other rappers who, and there are oftentimes rappers who freestyle in order to rebuttal something that's being said right there that maybe they didn't necessarily write and address in their rounds, because that's part of the meticulous chess game that it is with the war of words, is that you prepare for what you're gonna say and you prepare to defend yourself against what they could possibly say. But some rappers are nice enough. Charlie Clips is one of my favorite rappers. He's probably the GOAT at this. Freestyling, like hearing something you said in that second, freestyling 4 bars that like diss you or discredit something you said, or just comment on, like, I've seen Charlie Clips comment and freestyle in the middle of his round when someone drops something, you know what I mean, like someone drops something off stage and he comments on, and you might drop like that water bottle did, like, you know what I mean. Wow. So like clearly freestyling, and it's just whether or not you're good enough to do that. And sometimes that's even bit Charlie Clips in the ass, you know what I mean? He freestyles, you can tell he goes on that tangent. Maybe he even does it for a couple bars because he's nice, a couple lines, but then he comes back to try and he's like, all right, back to my round, and then he maybe stumbles a little, chokes, and you gotta see them prep. So it's a double-bladed or double-edged sword, and it's a risk you're running.
Exactly. I was that's why I wanted to ask the question, because I wasn't sure exactly how that worked, because there were some rebuttals in with both of them. So that was why I was more or less but either way, I think even pre-writing them and then being able to like actually perform them in the way that they do, as long as they're doing it for like some of these they're like 5-ish 6 minutes long, some of these, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
man.
I think
Yeah,
that even
man.
that in itself is impressive. I'm more impressed with, I would have been more impressed if they freestyled it, but I'm still impressed even so if they're memorizing it. The only when I was watching it the first night, I saw
Can I say to that point, someone who's prolific, because they kind of agree on the rules beforehand about the length of the rounds. Sometimes they go unlimited, sometimes they go 5-minute rounds, and lots of times the battle rappers will talk about that. One of the most prolific people is Loaded Lux. He's one of like the vets, the gods of this thing. Okay. If you want to take some time, if anybody out here wants to take some time and just witness the amount of material this man has memorized and like with the animation he's going off of it, he loves the unlimited round settings, and he'll go for 10 minutes around. He'll prepare. He could probably go 15 minutes around. You know what I mean? I'm talking about 45 minutes of wordplay. Like,
it's wild, dude. It's wild. And for me, like, again, not being familiar with this culture, with this scene, the only rapper that I know well by name is daylyt, and just because I've heard actually his music before. I had heard some of his stuff, because I think he one of his projects, I can't remember the name of it now off the top of my head, but he posted like the actual cover was him and Drake going back and forth on like a tweet or something like that. So that was super cool. And and
he also posted if you don't know if you know this, when Kanye was gonna make Jesus is King, and the title of it was still kind of going around, and then when it came out as Jesus is King, daylyt dropped something, like an album at first that was named Jesus is King, and really? it was like the same cover. It was like the big. He's a troll, you know what I mean? He does that. He messes with the internet in that way because he has an eccentric personality. But like he's willing to go that far. I remember looking. Like it looked like a Kanye West project had released. It was the Jesus is King cover. I want to say it was Jesus is King title, or it was like whatever at the time was like being theorized to be the title of the project. And when all those kind of fake pump fakes that Kanye does when it was being released, he even went that far to like just rip the cover, rip the title. He's a crazy dude.
That's crazy. Yeah, no, and like I said, I knew him from a little bit from hearing his music, but no, I find it interesting that, you know, these battle rappers aren't really like bigger artists, and I think that there's a lot. I think there's definitely a distinct difference between being able to find catchy and melodic, you know, music and hooks and things like that versus the battle rap. I think it's not obviously it's rapping. It's still hip hop, but it's definitely a different animal than it is. And I could feel that it was the feeling of it was very palpable for me, like listening to it. And I think it's one of those things where I don't think you're going into it to like enjoy the music of it, or like you're more going into like listening to like you're saying, the lyricism, the metaphors, the bars, right? Like and then of course like the battle back and forth of like just how ruthless both these dudes were. I was stunned some of the stuff they were talking about.
Yeah, no, the disrespect that teaches you first and foremost, that teaches you like, oh, this is not abiding by any, like, it's almost like stand-up comedy, you know what I mean? Like
I did have that
like,
feel.
It's that realm where they're allowed to say whatever they want, and you're definitely not going there for the music, the flows. That is a plus. You're going there for who can say the most disrespectful thing
in the smartest way.
In the most clever way. The flow, there's no beat, you know what I mean?
Right, exactly. It's all a cappella.
It's public speaking, really.
Yeah.
While rhyming.
It's wild. It's an interesting topic. We'll definitely have to review when another battle comes out. I would love to like review it again and talk about it, because I'm definitely now fascinated and enamored with this culture, and it's very interesting. Thank you for putting me onto it, because it definitely helped me to broaden my horizons of what, you know, hip hop and music is and things like that.
More people need to do this, and I think it's important, just like for me as a hip hop fanatic, like it's important for this kind of stuff to stay alive, because it also reminds us like that, you know, hip hop is poetry, hip hop is intellectual, you know, theater. You know what I mean? This is essentially what that is too. So I'm glad to put you on. Damn, you said Murda Mook 2-1.
I got Murda Mook 2-1. I'll
Murda Mook 2-1 in the second round too. The second round I feel like is the most arguable for Tay Roc.
Interesting. I'll listen back again, and then maybe if see if my opinion changes, but maybe off the second listen. But first initial listen, I had Murda Mook 2-1. So,
that's real.
But yeah,
my girlfriend said the same thing. My girlfriend actually said 3-0 Murda Mook.
Okay.
She just
there you go.
And
so
my girlfriend has gotten some secondhand experience and knowledge from like me forcing her to watch rap battles. So with me,
I was gonna say, right?
She watched this one with me, and she said Murda Mook 3-0. But she agreed with me. If there's anything that you can argue for Tay Roc, it was that second round, because that's where I think, at least energetically, he seemed the most locked in, with the most conviction, and that's what he does best. So that's interesting. That's interesting.
The beautiful thing of hip hop, but we're definitely disagreed on some things today, but that's again, it's the beautiful nature of hip hop and art, really, as a whole. But
definitely,
yeah.